Alright, we're gonna let the Tara Smith video finish, and then I'm gonna start loading up some of the other videos, or some of the other recordings.
If I'm temporarily put up in a hotel for a week, I can handle that too. I've got people who are going to be trying to help me with some of this stuff, like Meg. And I think if you talk to her a little bit, you'll start to get a little bit of...
Meg was trying, but she couldn't do this and couldn't do that. She couldn't do any of the things that an advocate is supposed to do for a person. You've gotten to hear from these professionals how impossible it is, how difficult it is. See, that's why preventative measures needed to be taken right at the very start. Someone needed to actually go in with me. Throwing me out on the fucking streets, that was fucking horrible. I didn't stalk Natalie. Her and her friends and family stalked me. And I was never allowed to show that. My so-called friends, like Kayla Trujillo, threw me out. Threw me out into the fucking cold. Threw me out to be fucking harmed. Threw me out to be assaulted. Over a crime she knew I didn't fucking commit. So did Candace Bondurant. Right or wrong never entered into any of these people's minds, or they would have fucking thought about what it is that someone goes through after having their name slandered on the news like that. Meg was at least trying. She didn't actually try to help how I needed. She didn't. Not until after the situation where I was assaulted by Scott DaCosta for trying to turn him in. This is the problem with being an at-risk adult. Nobody fucking cares until it's too fucking late. Katie Saltzman didn't actually help. She's missing now. Meanwhile, the people who are supposed to do this fucking job, people like Kara Heller, people like Penny Cooper, people like Jen Beebe, they didn't do their fucking jobs either. Why? Because I had to go in alone. Every fucking time I had to go in alone.
Understanding of this. I do get a lot louder, and I have meltdowns a lot more often now. And she's at the point where when she started dealing with me after 3 years of this, so I mean, she's basically being punished for the way the people before her treated me. And it's not an intentional thing, it's an I am completely scared thing. If that makes sense.
It does. It makes sense.
A lot of the suggestions that people make over and over, I know that they mean well, but I need them to stop giving suggestions that I've already done or am already doing, and either A, go through those suggestions with me, which she has actually done that. She's the one person to do so. It's not in person though. She's a long ways away.
Where's she at?
I do not know. You'd have to ask her that. I intentionally don't ask. She tells me that she's on the opposite end of the state and she can't make it here. I leave her at that. That's good enough.
Okay. And that could very well be.
If it's important for you to know it, I'm sure she'll fill you in. You're all professional and whatever.
Right. And she very well could be at the other end of the state and not have they won't allow her to travel out here. That very well could be.
All right.
Are you done with the paper? I'll take the.
Yeah, I'll give you that for now.
Okay.
I should probably write my name on it, shouldn't I?
No, so put your file.
Well, in Mordecai, when he assaulted me, he almost broke my wrist, but apparently it wasn't broken, and it's a good thing I can write, but to
Yes,
this
you
day
can.
I still have
Still
problems with it.
No.
Beautiful handwriting, don't I?
You do have good handwriting.
Yeah, I'm an artist. I used to draw people for a living. I can also paint, and I can sculpt. Sculpting is the first thing I found out I was good at. What's today's date?
Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. So, okay, so which is a good phone number for you?
I'll write mine down too.
Okay.
Have it on the back. Yes, I have to write my phone number down on the back of my phone. I'm sorry.
Don't be. That's all right.
The first thing that I lose under stressful situations is names and phone numbers, which is why I write them down and document them.
You know your shortcoming. There's nothing wrong with that.
I do. I just wish other people would understand them better. It very much feels as if people are exploiting me because of it, and whether they're doing it intentionally or not, the repercussions are still the same, you know? Like whether, let's say you got a couple of kids, and one of them gets his hand burned on the climbing on the stove because the other kid told him to. Now maybe he did it because he was trying to be mean, and maybe he legitimately didn't know that the stove were on, but the point of the matter is we don't need to be blaming at that point. We need to be taking that kid to the hospital for the burn on his hand. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Treat the disease, not the symptom, but in that case it's important to remedy the system or the symptom as soon as possible. All right.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Sean.
Oh, sorry. Would it be all right if I had them make a photocopy of this for me?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
That gentleman last night that let me stay at his place, he said I can stay there for a few. He knows I need a break from life. It gives me a safe place to make my phone calls out of the wind so that my fingers aren't froze. Also because he's there and his dog's there, it puts me at ease.
Sure.
But
Sure.
it's a very temporary thing.
Right.
So I really don't have any options as far as housing. And as we all know, Nebraska doesn't have crap for assistance when it comes to people who are suffering from sensory overload. And most people aren't even aware of what that is. They're not familiar with autism beyond what they've seen in the movies. You know, that kid in the corner with the football helmet bashing his head on the wall, or it's, you know, Rain Man. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not Rain Man, and I'm not that other dude bashing his head against the wall either.
So have you been to a doctor in the last year?
I've been to a lot of doctors.
Where at?
Here, Wyoming, Washington State.
Here we say here, you mean Chapel?
Here in Nebraska.
You've gone and seen doctors?
Yes, there's no hospital here. They just have a clinic.
Clinic,
because
right.
of the COVID thing. How often they have people there even.
Sure.
I just want to say that I do have an IQ of 172. And statistically, there's only one person with that intelligence quotient for every town, cities, and cities, towns, and villages in the United States. You're more likely to...
The sheriff told me you were extremely smart.
I am. When I'm overwhelmed, I shut down, and that's also part of the issue with autism, is that I pick up way more than everyone else. If you ask me a question about a situation, I may have to stop and reflect on what I was doing at the time in order to remember fully. So if you ask me a question, it won't necessarily be an immediate answer. both in one question at a time or I'll be stumped, because now I'm trying to look for both sets of information. And I do have to sit and think about it. A lot of sensory overload stuff is like you can probably walk through a room where there's balloons on either side of it. You know, they're getting ready to have a wedding, or maybe it's a fashion show, whatever. And for you, you can walk right through, no problem. For me, it's a bunch of different colored balloons, and I'm trying not to notice every single balloon. I'm trying not to notice the grain of the wood or the patterns in this. And at the same time, I'm also trying to think about the reflective properties of the angle of this while I'm moving past it, while trying to think about what it is that you're trying to get from me as far as information goes. And that works a lot better if you talk to me the way that you do and ask your questions the way that you do. I know that I've gone off on a lot of stuff that seems off topic, and I hope that the next time that we communicate, I will be less stressed because of the way that you've interacted with me in this one. And I will be less likely to throw at you a bunch of stuff that is important that I have to consider through all of this and have had to consider. A lot of the stuff that you may have as an idea, I might tell you that I've already gone through it, and instead of going through it, if you went through it with me, then we might have better results. And a lot of these situations, that's exactly how it has to work. The police have instructed me that, hey, if you've got somebody else there, especially if you're, having a severe panic attack like that, it's difficult for us to know because we're not medical professionals. If there's somebody there with you, first of all, a lot of people don't do their jobs. A lot of people are lazy. If you've got someone else with you, they're more likely to do their jobs. Also, if there's somebody there to explain autism even a little bit to them before they talk to you, that will save you a lot of issues. Now, if it's just you, like we don't know the difference between Tourette syndrome and moving weird because you're on meth. We don't know the difference between you being mad because you're autistic and, somebody who's drunk or who's on drugs of another sort. And we also don't know, because of how fast you're talking, for you, we understand now, but after your explanation, we understand that you're extremely scared at that point. But at the time for us, it would have been nice if somebody who didn't have those issues when they're that scared would have been present to explain it. And that's part of the reason for going to an autism doctor. They might be able to hook me up with some people who are better equipped to handle that. Also, in the meantime, Scott has agreed that Chapel does need to have some autism training, so hopefully he will coordinate with Meg to help to get that to happen, because she also does that. The Autism Society of Nebraska, they teach people all across Nebraska, so
That's good.
They're very involved.
That's good.
With Meg, though, she doesn't get paid for it like Region 1 does. She doesn't get paid like you do. She's a volunteer strictly. The number of hours that she has spent with me, also the number of times where I've been hysterical and screaming at her because I'm literally, at the end of my rope on this. And when I'm calling her now, I'm under a severe amount of stress and duress, and been through a lot of situations here that are really scary. And for her, she's made a lot of phone calls herself, and Amanda also has made a lot of phone calls herself, and Katie has done a lot, Brandon has done a lot, and Steve has actually gone to a few of these places with me, so he's familiar a little bit more with the court side of it because he was there in person with some of it, and he also is familiar with a lot of the services in Colorado and familiar with the fact that, when I said I was trying to get help, I was. Steve was trying to help me as well. But the problem is that my safety in Boulder is kind of an issue.
I know.
So.
And I agree with that. I think that is a big issue for you. Absolutely.
There's a lot of other victims too. When you look up Waylon Lolotai's name, you won't see me on there. You'll see what he did to other people. But also, his name is on my paperwork, and also I have video of the assault by him. The problem is that they wouldn't allow the body cameras. I've requisitioned the body cameras on multiple occasions. They tell me that I need to get a lawyer for that. I've looked up the laws for it. I don't need a lawyer to get that information. In order to get their body camera footage in regards to an assault or a situation that I was in there, they're supposed to give it to me. I may have to requisition it through the courts specifically, and that's part of the issue with how people treat you when you're different. They might just automatically assume, and they just don't want to deal with you.
I don't know if it's necessarily people that are different. It's that some law enforcement agencies think they're above the law or they're higher than other people, and they look down on people and say, you can demand this, but I don't have to do it, so I'm going to play with you and play mind games with you and not give you the body cam. Even though you're right, I assume, that you don't, that the law backs you and says they have to give it to you, they're going to play their little power and control thing and say, well, we're not going to give it to him until he gets a court order from a judge.
Well, they charged me with assault against a police officer because of the situation. And then when I was adamant that I was going to take it to court, and I absolutely was not going to let the body cameras go, they needed to be in court. They do exist, and that's when they dropped the charges. A lot of the issue that has made it so that it's an issue nationwide is the fact that I was charged with assault against a police officer when I was assaulted. I was not allowed to have access to those body cameras at that point in time. I was prevented because of assumptions of my disabilities, and also the fact that, well, there's a lot of dynamics that you literally just explained yourself that went into that, and I'm overwhelmed with the sheer volume of it, because once you've been charged with assault against a police officer, even though they dropped the charges, that's still on my arrest record, which the police don't have full access to my criminal record. They have to go through NCIC and do a bunch of crap in order to get all of that. But my arrest record, they look at it and they're like, oh, he assaults police officers. Well, right in that, frame of mind, you can imagine, let's say your last name, right? There's people that you're related to with that last name that might not have done the nicest things, but you may not know that that person with that last name did things that aren't so nice, and when somebody comes up and accuses your family member of doing something they shouldn't,
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
You don't want your family member getting in trouble, and you want to protect your family, and you also, well, that's basically it. You want to protect your family,
Sure.
and you may not know that they had done wrong, or you may assume that because it's family that they didn't do wrong, or you might just be sticking up for them because you know that they did wrong, but at the same time you don't think it's something that they should be in trouble for. It should be something that's let go, and you may not necessarily understand the impact that it had on the person's life who is, unhappy. We also have something that's called professional courtesy, which there's actually over 30 organizations trying to make that illegal. That's where if another officer makes a mistake, then you basically go, well, you're only human, so we're going to let you go. Well, I agree with that, actually, 100%. If an officer makes a mistake, everybody makes a mistake.
It's truly a mistake.
That's right. And if it is truly a mistake, then they should be willing to admit it. Mm-hmm. It's once they start hiding the fact that they made a mistake that it becomes a problem for me. A lot of these officers, I understand why they assumed the worst in me and why they went vigilante. And it's not like they went vigilante as in trying to hunt me or shoot me or anything like that. It just was,
John,
you need to leave town and things like that.
If they were assaulting you while you were in jail, that's not okay. You didn't deserve that. I don't care what they say. If they think you had autism, or if, I know you said you don't have schizophrenia, whatever they thought, that's never okay for them to assault you.
I agree. But also getting so someone to listen when they can use that to prevent you from getting hurt, but there's also the fact that you don't have anyone to protect you. I'm just as vulnerable now as I was then, and it's my vulnerabilities that they've preyed on. But then when I go to these different programs, I'm not vulnerable enough, apparently.
I know, because I'm sitting here thinking the same thing.
I do want to state, as a matter of fact, that no officer who works for Scott DaCosta has ever assaulted me. None of them have ever physically assaulted me. The officers who physically assaulted me were mostly B-grade cops who, they're jail guards, they're not actual cops, or cops in specific who have a history of violence.
They're the ones that we're hearing about now on TV all the time.
Yes, literally. Actually, if
Yeah.
you look up Waylon Lolatai, he was on TV. Also, Elijah McClain. People are saying, hey, if Elijah McClain, if somebody had told him that he was autistic, things would have happened differently. The evidence that I have shows that it doesn't matter if you tell him or not. I was told by the attorneys that I was trying to contact before Natalie died. They told me, we can't be your attorneys because you were called mentally ill. You have to have somebody come in with you and verify this. But you do need to, anytime that you have an interaction with the cops, you need to let them know that you're autistic. And they are supposed to have their body cameras on. And that way, you know, if they do treat you that way, it's not like you didn't tell them ahead of time. If they're not trained and there's an issue that arises because of their lack of training, then we can prove in court that you did try to explain it to them, and that it was their lack of training that was the issue, and that, again, is not your fault. You are trying. The fact is, when I told them that I was autistic, I still got treated like Elijah McClain, with being injected with drugs and slammed down to the ground and all of that. And in those situations, some of them I was trying to tell on jail guards or other officers, and that's a very scary situation for me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of these people didn't do wrong things because they're bad people. They did wrong things because they made bad assumptions. A lot of the people who are mean to me in town, it's because they heard rumors and made bad assumptions, and they're legitimately afraid for their kids. They're like, well, we don't know if he's going to go off the hook someday and kill our kids or rape our kids or this or that or the other. I'm like, you know, you've watched Mice and Men too many times. And I get to tend the rabbits, and then he breaks her neck. No, I'm not that dude.
People are afraid of people that are different.
Yes. They're afraid of what they don't understand. Mm-hmm. And the more I try to teach people who have it set that it's a certain way, the more difficulties I run into.
Yes.
One of the doctors that I talked to, he said, you know, I went through medical school in the 1970s, all right? We have dealt with a lot of autism since then. I'm like, yeah, but you went to school in the 1970s. How many of your medical journals do you read about autism? Well, I'm not an autism specialist. I'm like, yep, exactly. We've made a lot of headway. I mean, where we were in the 80s made the 70s look like the Stone Age. Where we were in the 90s made the 80s look like the Stone Age. Where we were in the early 2000s made the 90s look like the Stone Age. And what we have today, we're getting to see that officers and places that I was specifically dealing with, Clearview, Lolatai, the Adams County Sheriff's Department and Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department, Aurora Police Department, two of the officers I had to deal with in Natalie's case were detectives from that department, but I also had several difficulties with their officers after that. Trying to get them to take a report as a homeless person, and then I also had the difficulty of not knowing how to record it, so I couldn't even record that I was making the attempts.
It's an uphill battle.
Yes, ma'am. And then there's the fact that because of my disabilities, the rules for courts are different. Mentally ill, they try to cover all of their bases by saying, all right, what's the extreme of mental illness? All right, that would be a violent schizophrenic with violent impulses who also has auditory and visual hallucinations. Mm-hmm. This is the person who is going to flip out every single time.
Right.
But he's at the far end of the extreme, and there's laws set for that guy that he might be depressed, or he might just have issues with reading. I mean, I know a lot of people who are considered mentally disabled because they don't know how to read. And it's not that they don't try. Many of them have a good reading comprehension even. It's just that their comprehension is based on their ability to put the words together. And because of the situations of them having problems with dyslexia, that later turns into a lot more problems with PTSD or anger issues.
Well, I'm not sure how much help I'm going to be. I'm going to be completely honest with you, Sean. I don't know how much help I'm going to be. If I will look for some places for you to go, it's going to be a struggle because, like you said, we're very limited in Nebraska, what we have for facilities.
Well, any major populated city east of us is going to be better than this one.
Yep.
I've been told that there is some people in Valentine at a clinic there that are helpful. I've been told that
Really?
Sargent is close enough to it that there might be some assistance that would be able to get me from one to the other, but I haven't looked into it yet. Like for me, running around all the time, I don't get time to sit down and look up every single little thing that I would like to. But Lincoln looks like a good possible option, with the exception of it's pretty full. And it's a big city, so I would basically have to have the housing immediately and basically just stay home most of the time. So
Yeah, you probably have to go to a homeless shelter.
I can't. I can't handle a homeless shelter, never could. I walked people to the homeless shelters and gave them blankets for 7 years in Boulder, Colorado, but I didn't stay. Now they are able to get government assistance based on the number of people who walk through the door and utilize their services. So every single night that I walked somebody up there, I did write my name on their list, and I made sure that I grabbed at least one of the snacks that they have there. That way, you know, they're at least having my name on there, and that actually helps them out. And since I did use their services, I brought somebody to their services. I don't feel that's unreasonable. But it's the fact that there's so many people in one place. Sure. Many different smells, many different voices, many different personalities, and in a homeless shelter or a warming center or anything like that, I mean, a fight breaks out, you know, sometimes every night, sometimes 2-3 nights a week, you know.
I would worry about you going to a homeless shelter.
Me too.
Just the external noise and the stimuli and everything going on would maybe not be good for the autism.
And see, right there, you know exactly the right word to use for that too.
Okay. Okay,
I'd like to get the photocopy
yes,
of this.
yes, if you would, that would be great.
By that time, I had not yet been assaulted by Scott Acosta. I was still trying to turn him in. The problem with being forced to go to Scott Acosta and his deputies after Natalie's death, and especially after what her sister and her dad were doing at my grandma's funeral, was that they weren't gonna do their fucking jobs. I needed someone to go in with me to speak up about what they knew. But obviously going to Scott Acosta was not the right direction. Obviously he was going to do everything that he could to cover up for the crimes of anybody who was helping with his goal and his deputy's goal of running me out of town. These tactics are used nationwide to run out the homeless, to run out people that you don't like because they're not popular. I hate my life so much. No services, no services, no services. If you're disabled, you are jail fodder, you are prison fodder. If you are disabled and a homeless male, you are not a human being. You don't get treated like a human being, you get blown off. People kept telling me I need to get a lawyer. With what money? All of my money goes to paying off these motherfuckers in the courts and traveling to the courts and traveling to try to find somewhere safe. Where's the goddamn money for a lawyer, huh? Meanwhile, Scott DeCosta was awful nice when somebody's there, ain't he? What a fucking piece of shit. This is after the Nebraska State Patrol was supposed to do something, was supposed to have an investigator do something. They still hadn't gotten a hold of me. They didn't bother to call me or anything even close until after the assault by State Trooper Lassen and Scott DeCosta, when I was trying to turn in Scott DeCosta. Still, after what happened in 2018, it was inappropriate for Nebraska State Patrol to make me go back to him and his deputies.
Also, I don't know if you guys have any kind of food voucher or anything, but they only give me $16 a month for food stamps.
And that sucks.
Having to move out of there cost me a lot because I had to get my stuff moved and didn't have my own way to move it. Also, I got a car that I'm working on that I had to get a battery and some other stuff for it.
Okay.
So that's in anticipation of my driver's license getting here.
Okay.
Once that happens, I can survive in my car. I've done
You
that
have before, I know that.
Absolutely. And it works a lot easier than the dumpster that I live behind in Boulder, so.
Yeah. Okay. We do not have food vouchers. Yeah. Do you guys have food pantry here?
We do. And I actually know the guy who runs it. I can go down to the post office and ask the lady who's working there if they could open it up for an emergency thing.
Okay.
And just give me stuff that's non-perishable. I could eat out of a can or something like that, nothing that needs to be cooked, and I think they'd understand that.
I need somebody to help me.
I'll probably do that in a little bit. Right now I need to try to get my stuff moved before the city calls the tow truck and the tow truck moves it.
Yeah, that would not be good.
They took it all.
Okay, and I got somebody else I need to go hunt down here in Chapel. So if you'll give me one of those copies, that would be great.
I'm sorry for talking so long.
Don't be, Sean, it's okay.
That's serious.
You're good. I feel like I got to know you a little bit better than I did last time, standing at Broken Pantry.
Well, one of those officers, actually both of those officers, the State Patrol Officer William Burr and Officer Hahn, they both, by that point I was already uncomfortable with Officer Hahn, and also because nothing had happened with my attempt to get the State Patrol to take a look at it. They never called me back and never wrote me a letter, nothing. So out there. Everybody who did wrong because they had misunderstandings or misgivings that really should have been cleared up. I don't freak out for no reason. If I am freaking out, it's a very clear, people's lives are at stake at that point. If I'd have been listened to in Colorado, Clearview would have been shipped down a lot sooner. Ivor Hatay might still be alive. Elijah McClain might still be alive. Elijah McClain, I have ties with the officers, with some of the officers involved in that case, but not the specific ones that ended up getting him killed or the EMT in that situation. But when it comes to the Lolatai situation, the same exact officers. Also, the assault that George is talking about in the video, I'll send that to your email too, so if there's links to it.
Perfect.
That assault took place in the Boulder County Jail. That was a different assault than the one by Lolatai. I also have paperwork in my horse trailer. That's part of the reason that that Meg is sending me those boxes, so that that stuff is safe. Nobody's going to go steal it or anything like that. But there's signed documents from some of the other people that I was in jail with about some of the assaults and threats and harassment in the jails, and some of them were afraid to do so.
Sure.
I don't know how much you all are aware of the jail system, but when people in the jail who are inmates are actually standing up for your rights, the cops have usually done, or the jailers have usually done some pretty screwed up stuff, because nobody wants to get in trouble for standing up. Yes, ma'am. I do have some of the hospital records that I needed to get. I was able to get a hold of some people yesterday at the hospital in Haxton. And the doctor that I needed to talk to has moved on to Holyoke, but they're going to send me the requisition information. By the time it gets here, I should have my driver's license here.
Oh, good.
And that's the last thing that I need in order to collect all of my medical records. Now, they're only sending me the requisition form, but it's a start.
I got you. You got to start somewhere.
Yes, ma'am. Also, yesterday I yelled at Meg a whole bunch. That's at the point where we are over the misunderstandings with text messages. And also me being scared of the situation. She shouldn't have to deal with that. It's not my fault that she had the misunderstandings that she...
You know why I was yelling at Meg? Because it had been over 6 months of me explaining to her, hey, Meg, you have to tell the cops in Dual County that that's not your job. You have to tell them, Meg, we've been going over this for 6 months. You have to tell them. You tell them. You have to tell them. You. 6 goddamn months of my goddamn life you wasted because you couldn't tell them that it's not your fucking job. It's not that I'm not saying it, it's that people, it goes in one fucking ear and comes out the other. This shit is inhumane.
Did, and it's not her fault. I had the misunderstandings that I did, but both of our personalities are very much we're going to say it a few times so that we impress the point upon you so that you understand. All right.
Thank you for coming down here and meeting with me. I appreciate it, Sean.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I was as nice as I could be. I was scared the whole time. There wasn't anybody with me, so she didn't actually do anything. Nobody does. That's the problem with being a disabled adult. Anyone can do anything to you at any point in time, and none of these people are going to do anything about it. Just tell you to move on, move on, move on. Holy fucking shit.